Hello everyone, this is Soap here. This is my first ever YouTube video and I figured I would do an in-depth character creation guide on Baldur's Gate 3, my favorite game. There are several character creation guides that already exist on the internet, but I did notice that for quite a few of them, there seems to be small inaccuracies that might leave some people confused if they're brand new to the Baldur's Gate series or 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which is what this is based off of. So I figured I would do my own attempt here on doing as much of a thorough explanation that you would need to succeed in this game. I have quite a few hours in this game, so I like to think I know what I'm talking about. I got about 1,000 hours clocked in, and even more hours of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So we'll kind of start right away with the first option you're going to have here in character creation screen, which is what you want to start as. Do you want to start as your own custom created character, which you can be any of these races here? With the origin characters, with the exception of the Dark Urge, which we will get to later, you are set to a specific race and character. You cannot change their appearance, and they have their own backstory. These characters, Astarion, Lae'zel, Gale, Shadowheart, Will, and Karlach, are all going to be companions that you will encounter on any custom playthrough or a Dark Urge playthrough. Now, when you play as these origin characters, you will get to experience their backstory and parts of their personality. But one important thing to note is that for most dialogue, they are not voiced. So you will be losing a lot of the voice acting that you'll be getting from having them as a companion. I recommend on your first playthrough to either do a custom or the Dark Urge. And again, we'll explain more about the Dark Urge in just a moment. Now, we're going to assume you're going to start with a custom character. Here in the bottom right, you can select your body type. Body type 1 and 2 are going to be your thin frames. 1 is going to be a female thin frame. 2 is going to be a male thin frame. Then we got your muscular frames, 3 and 4. 3 is muscular female, 4 is muscular male. You can click randomize appearance button in here if you'd like, if you want to just see what kind of goofy stuff you can get. We got some silly looking high elf there. And we'll get to all these things here on the right here. We're going to take a little bit at a time here to make sure we don't get overwhelmed. When you are selecting your character, you're going to pick your race. We got elves, tieflings, drow, human, githyanki, dwarf, halfling, or half-elf, halfling, gnome, dragonborn, and half-orc. Quite a few to pick from. We got 11 races here. And there's more races in the game, some that you can't play, like bugbears and goblins, but these are our choices for player-selected races. Each race is going to come with their own race feature, with benefits or downfalls, depending on the race that you're selecting. For elves, you're going to have a base movement speed of 9 meters per turn. This is a standard movement speed. This is what most people are going to be moving. So it is not bad or good, it is default pretty much. Elves get elven weapon training. You have proficiency with the longsword, short bow, and longbow. Proficiency means you are more likely to hit with that weapon, and you'll be able to use that weapon's special short rest abilities. For example, if you have a rapier, you can use the flourish ability to knock someone off balance, or you can use piercing strike or piercing shot with the crossbow or a dagger if you're proficient in those weapons. Now, your class that you pick will also determine your weapon proficiencies. So your race is all just giving you additional proficiencies if your race does not include that, or if your class does not include that already. Apologies. So if you're playing as an elven fighter, then this proficiency with longsword, short bow, and longbow doesn't really matter because a fighter is going to have proficiency in every single weapon already. They have simple weapon proficiency and martial weapon proficiency. However, if you're playing as a wizard, so to speak, A wizard only has proficiency in 3 weapons. So an elven wizard will allow you to equip a longsword, short bow, or longbow, which you otherwise would not be able to. And we'll get into more about what classes have what proficiencies later on here in the video. Elves will also have dark vision. They can see in the dark up to 12 meters. So beyond 12 meters, you're going to have disadvantage on your ranged weapon attacks and ranged spell attacks. You only have to worry about melee attacks being at disadvantage because you're going to be within 12 meters when you're doing a melee attack. Now, disadvantage means that you're going to roll 2 dice to hit, and you will take the lower dice since you are at disadvantage to hit. If you had an advantage to hit a target, it is the opposite. You will roll 2 dice, and you will take the higher number. Advantage can be gained to hit in many ways, such as hiding, or other abilities like Guiding Bolts, which is a cleric spell, which we'll cover. Elves also get Fey Ancestry. You have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic cannot put you to sleep. And that's just straight up that any magical spell that would put you to sleep will not do it. Elves don't sleep, they meditate, so they are immune to sleep magic. Now, advantage on saving throws against being charmed is pretty nice. There are some abilities in the game that are quite detrimental if you get charmed. Now, of course, having advantage on that means that you will roll 2 dice for your saving throw and you will take the higher number. So that's what elves are going to start with. High elves, which you'll get a subrace to pick here when you're playing as an elf, will give you a high elf cantrip. You can select any of these wizard cantrips for your high elf cantrip. One thing to keep in mind is that these cantrips are scaled off of intelligence, each one of them, as you can see marked on the screen here. You can select any of these cantrips that seem to be best for you. I would avoid Tree Strike. Tree Strike is known to be a pretty bad cantrip, probably the worst spell in the game. But Firebolt's good for setting off explosions. Shock and Grasp is great. Friends is really good if you're playing as this as your main protagonist. But yeah, you'll be able to pick any one of these, so you can add a little bit of magic to any class, even if you're not going to be a magical-based class. That is the one advantage that a High Elf gets over its counterpart, which is Wood Elf. Wood Elf will increase your movement speed by 1.5 meters. Wood Elf will be the fastest default speed you can start with on any class. It's the only class that gives you increased movement speed. So you will go from 9 meters to 10.5. Now, 1.5 meters probably doesn't seem like much. However, there are many times in the game where you'll notice that you are just out of range to attack with your sword. So the 1.5 meters you get can be really helpful in early levels to make sure you're in for a melee strike. So Wood Elves are great for upfront fighters, or if you just want to be a ranged fighter that wants to create more distance from your enemy. Wood Elves will also start with a natural proficiency in stealth, which you'll see on the High Elf here, we do not have that. So that is another skill that Wood Elves will start with. So they get the increased movement speed and stealth, but you will not be able to select a cantrip since you are not a High Elf. Moving on to Tieflings, we have 3 different classes for Tieflings. Tieflings are, they look really scary, they look like evil creatures, but they're not necessarily that way. They are just born as descendants from devils. And they are often ridiculed for their appearance, but many tieflings are heroic and good-natured. They just kind of look a little scary. So tieflings are going to start with your base movement speed, 9 meters per turn. They also have 12 meter vision for dark vision, just like elves do. And they gain hellish resistance. You have resistance to all fire damage. You take only half damage from fire. So that is a nice benefit to have. It's not amazing because there are other ways you can get resistance to fire damage, but it's still a nice thing to have at early levels because fire is a very common damage type that you'll come across. Now, tieflings will get spells and cantrips at level 1, 3, and 5 as part of their leveling. Asmodeus tieflings will get Produce Flame, and at the 3rd level, they get an additional spell. And then at the 5th level, they get another additional spell. I can't remember exactly what they are, So there's guides on the online on the wiki that'll tell you what spells they get at which levels. But you will start with Produce Flame, as it is Modius Tiefling. A Mephistopheles Tiefling starts with the Mage Hand, and they get additional spell at level 3 and level 5. And the Zariel Tiefling, which I'm most familiar with, will start with Thaumaturgy. So we have Produce Flame, Mage Hand, and Thaumaturgy. Now, the thing about the Zariel Tiefling is they're probably going to be the best for a melee fighter, because at level 3 you will get Searing Smite, which is a melee focus spell that you can use once per short rest. And then at level 5 you will get Branding Smite, which is another smite spell that you can use once per short rest. Mephistopheles and Asmodeus Tieflings are more focused on either range combat or utility. But the background here will kind of tell you a little bit about what nature of hell they're from. But that's really the only difference between these subraces, is just what spells you're going to be picking up. So not as much differences from here as there is with the elves. Moving on to Drow. Drow are a very fun race to play because there is a lot of interaction specific to Drow that you will encounter on the trail on your journey. Many people are scared of Drow, whether they're Wolfsworn Drow, which tend to be bad-natured Drow, or the Celadrine Drow, which tend to be good-natured Drow. Most people don't know the difference. They see the dark skin and the white hair, and they're scared right away. So there's a lot of unique dialogue and challenges you might have to overcome from being a Drow. But it's still definitely a race that's worth playing if you're interested, because there's so much unique dialogue that you get to experience with them. All Drow, Celadrine, and Wolfsworn will start with the Dancing Lights cantrip. And just like Tieflings, they get additional spells at level 3 and level 5. At level 3, they get Fairy Fire, which is a spell that will allow you to cast a blanket light on a group of people, including your friendly targets, so something you have to watch out for. And if this target hits an enemy or an allied creature, they must make a saving throw, or they will be vulnerable to having advantage against them for their next attack roll. At level 5, you get the Darkness spell, which is very useful if you're playing as a Warlock, and we'll cover why that's useful for Warlocks later. Otherwise, Darkness is mostly just going to be used as a spell to block off arrows from hitting you. It creates a dark cloud where spells and arrows are hard to pass through because they can't see what they're hitting. Now, Drows have a base movement speed of 9 meters, just like all the other races we've discussed so far, and they get Drow weapon training. You have proficiency with rapiers, short sword, and hand crossbow. Now, the most important thing here is going to be the hand crossbow. The hand crossbow is probably the best ranged weapon you're going to have, because you can wield 2 of them in each hand, and you can actually do a bonus action attack with your ranged weapon, which you cannot normally do with a short bow, long bow, light crossbow, or heavy crossbow. And we will cover the bonus actions and why those are so important for action economy later on. Superior Dark Vision is exclusive to the Underdark races, which I believe are going to be just Drow, Deep Gnomes, and our Dwagar Dwarves. They're all dark skinned and they come from the Underdark. You can see in the dark up to 24 meters. So this is twice the range of normal dark vision. At 24 meters, you're likely going to be within range for any ranged spell or melee or ranged weapon attack that you want to make. So in most cases, unless you're fighting from very far away, you will always be able to fight in the dark as a Drow. And then Drow also are an offshoot of elves. They get the same Fey ancestry as elves, where you have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and you cannot be put to sleep by magical means. Moving on to our favorite, the one we're most familiar with. Not the favorite for people, really, but if you want to, a human is a totally viable option to play. Humans move at the base speed of everyone else. They get a unique ability to them called Civil Militia. You have weapon proficiency with spears, pikes, halberds, and glaives. One thing to keep in mind is spears, pikes, halberd, and glaives are all strength-based weapons. So if you're playing as a dexterous class like a rogue or a ranger that is using longbows or crossbows for ranged weapon attacks, you will probably not care much about this weapon proficiency. because you're not going to have a high strength score most likely. But it is still good to have regardless if you want to have some flexibility in your weapon selection. You will also gain proficiency with light armor, which is not that big of a deal because light armor is probably the worst armor to wear in this game. You're either going to be a mage with mage armor, or you're going to want to have medium armor or heavy armor, unless you have a very high dexterity score. There's not a lot of great, unique light armor to wear in this game, but it is still viable if you have a high dexterity score. So it is a nice feature to have. But the most important thing here is that we get proficiency with shields. Shields will add a +2 by default to your AC, and there are many, many good shields in this game that are going to give you additional benefits. So that is a great feature to have. And human versatility is our final feature for the humans. You can select any additional skill to be proficient in. So there is no limits to that. You can just pick an extra skill to be proficient in regardless of your class, which is nice because when you're playing as the main character, you want to be proficient in as many skills as possible for those skill checks that you'll be rolling dice for. Your carrying capacity is also increased by 25%. That's not a huge deal. Carrying capacity is very minor in this game because you can send anything that you're carrying to your camp immediately from wherever you're walking. So being overburdened is never really a concern unless you just really want to become an ultra loot goblin and just sell as much as you can and not travel back to camp back and forth. So there we got our humans. There's no subclasses for humans because all humans are just humans. So then we move on to Githyanki. Githyanki are kind of an alien race that is going to be pretty unique to this game. You probably won't see them in most 5th edition D&D as a playable character. But regardless, they are important to the role of this, the story of this game. So playing as a Githyanki can be a quite rewarding experience, just like playing as the Drow, because of the unique dialogue that you will encounter from just being a Githyanki. Githyanki are very violent people. They were born in a culture of enslavement to the Mind Flayers, and Mind Flayers are an enemy you're going to come across a lot in this game. It's very relevant to the main story that what we were doing. So you'll have a lot of hatred towards the enemy that we're fighting against. And then many people will have comments about you being an alien species that's not native to Faerûn, the continent that we're on. Now, as a Githyanki, you get many good features. Githyanki are probably one of the best race to play as just for the features that you're given, because you start with astral knowledge, and you can use this once per long rest, but it lasts until your next long rest. So you just, when you're done taking sleep for the day, you just pop this feature off, and then it lasts throughout the entire day until you go to sleep, and then you can activate it again the next day for no cost at all, and you gain proficiency in all skills of a chosen ability. So if you're playing as a Githyanki, and we're going through our wisdom skills here, which would be, let's see, all of our wisdom skills are going to be survival, perception, medicine, insight, and animal handling. You could just say, I don't want to be proficient in any of these, and you will still get that proficiency if you select wisdom as your astral knowledge ability at the beginning of the day, and you'll have 5 skills that you're proficient in if you select wisdom, 5 for intelligence, 3 for dexterity. Athletics just has 1 for strength. And then you got your charisma skills, persuasion, performance, intimidation, and deception. So a very underrated ability that can be very game breaking if you know how to use it right. It kind of turns Githyanki into a jack of all trades with their skills, because they can just choose what they want to be good in for one day. Now, they also start with a cantrip of Mage Hand. Now, this cantrip is different than the cantrip that you have with your Mephistopheles Tiefling. Mephistopheles Tieflings have a spectral hand that can manipulate and interact with objects. The Githyanki Psionics Mage Hand, which is the same thing as a cantrip, it's an action. It doesn't cost you any spell slots. This one is an invisible hand that can manipulate and interact with objects. The only other class that gets an invisible mage hand is if you're playing as a rogue and you're doing arcane trickster at level 3. So with the mage hand being invisible, it allows it to not be targeted in combat, and allows you to do more sneaky things with it, like throwing water bottles at enemy to drench them in water for making them vulnerable against lightning damage, or even throwing bombs or explosives. So Mage Hand can be a very powerful tool if you know how to manipulate it right. At level 3, just like the Tieflings, they will get sorry, that phone call I just had threw me off there. You will get a jump ability at level 3, and this will allow you to triple your jumping distance once per day, I believe. I think it's long rest. Then at level 5, the big thing that Githyanki get is they will get a free cast of Misty Step once per day, or it might even be once per short rest. And Misty Step is a very powerful spell that allows you to reposition yourself from a distance. It's basically a short range teleport, and it's very useful to have. But there's many other ways you can also get Mage Hand through wizard spells or items. Githyanki move at the base movement speed of 9 meters per turn. So far, all races we've covered have done 9 meters. And they also get Martial Prodigy. Martial Prodigy gives you armor proficiency with light and medium armor. So you will be proficient in everything but heavy, unless you're playing as a class that is naturally proficient in heavy armor, as well as proficiency with the short sword, long sword, and most importantly, the great sword. There are many, many powerful great swords in this game. So all these proficiencies they get, in addition to their spells they learn and astral knowledge, just makes them a powerhouse for a starting class. The one disadvantage is that they don't have any night vision, as you may have noticed. So if you are in a dark environment as a Githyanki, you have to have a torch equipped or some kind of light source to illuminate the area for you to hit your attacks without being at disadvantage. In addition, they can also fall asleep, just like humans can, because they don't have, and tieflings as well, because they don't have innate resistance to sleeping magic. Moving on to dwarves. Dwarves have a lower base movement speed of 7.5 meters per turn, so they are a little slower at reaching a target than everyone else because of their shortness and stockiness. However, because of this downside that they get, they have several other good advantages. As a gold dwarf here for our subclass, you will have proficiency with the battle axe, hand axe, light hammer, and warhammer, all strength-based weapons. You can see in the dark up to 12 meters, just like most elves. In addition, you have advantage on saving throws against poison, which is a condition, and then resistance to poison damage, which is the damage type. So basically, all things poison related are going to be harder for dwarves, for gold dwarfs specifically. And we move on to shield dwarfs as our subclass. Oh wait, that's all dwarves. So then gold dwarves, their specific trait is that they have increased hit point maximum of 1 per level. So by the time you reach max level in this game, which was level 12, you will have 12 additional hit points. Not amazing, because that's a small amount at high levels, but it could be the difference between life and death. Shield dwarves, however, will have proficiency with light and medium armor. So just like Githyankis, if you want to have that armor proficiency, even if you're playing as a class that doesn't have armor proficiency, a shield dwarf might be a good option for you. Now, Dwagar, however, have some very interesting abilities. They have superior dark vision, so instead of the 12-meter dark vision range like most dwarves, you're going to get 24 meters, just like a drow does. They are an Underdark race. And Dwagar have advantage on saving throws against illusions and against being charmed or paralyzed. So many conditions there that they have advantage on. In addition, Dwagar also gets some spells, which isn't shown here, that they will learn at later levels. At level 3, I believe they get the Enlarge ability, which allows them to become bigger, and that gives them increased damage on their melee weapon strikes, and I think also advantage on their strength pushes and everything that they do. And at level 5, Dwagar will also get invisibility. And now this isn't like a spell slot invisibility, this is invisibility that they can cast as many times as they want outside of combat, and once per battle for free. So they are very good at being rogues or stealthy type characters that if you want to just send in a Dwagar invisible to maybe loot someone's pocket or to disable a trap without someone noticing, they're excellent to have for that very reason. Then we move on to half-elves. Half-elves are going to be just as they sound. They were born from a human parent and an elven parent. So we have our three different races here based off the elves that we have. We have the high half-elf, the wood half-elf, and the drow half-elf, which we will cover in a second here. They have your default movement speed of 9 meters per turn. Civil militia will give them weapon proficiency with spears, pikes, halberds, and glaives, and armor proficiency with light armor and shields. This is the same ability that you get from the humans, and makes sense because part of their heritage comes from a human parent. So they kind of get a little bit of both abilities from the elves and the humans. They get 12-meter dark vision range, just like regular elves do, and they get Fey ancestry, just like other elves. Now, if we're playing as a high half-elf, we get to select a cantrip, just like a regular elf does. So the one downside about being a high half-elf versus a regular high elf is that you won't have those weapon proficiencies of the short sword. I believe it's the short sword, long sword, short bow, and long bow. So you're trading that off for the human ability, which is just the civil militia ability. But they are pretty similar though. So honestly, just go for what's best for your role playing. Now the wood half elf is going to give you your fleet of foot. Your movement is increased by 1.5 meters, just like other wood elves, and you will get proficiency in stealth, just like regular wood elves. Now all elves, one thing I did forget to mention, not half elves, but elves and drows also get proficiency in perception by default. They will be proficient in perception. If you're playing as a half elf, you will not get that. So that is one downside about mixing the races there. Now, if you're playing as a drow half elf, you will not get your drow weapon proficiency training, so you won't have rapiers or hand crossbows as part of your toolkit for weapons to use, unless you're playing as a class that gives you those weapon proficiencies. But you will still learn the progression of drow spells, so you will still get Dancing Lights as a cantrip at level 1. Then you will get Fairy Fire as a spell to cast once per long rest at level 3, and then you will get Darkness at level 5. Drow Half-Elf also has some unique lines that are interesting to hear about people kind of lecturing you about being this disgusting half-breed, because not only are you a half-bred elf with a human, but someone bred with a drow. So it just makes, for a lot of people looking at you with disdain, it's fun for some role play if you like people to just look down on you. And maybe you can overcome that and shove it in their face. Then we go on to Halflings. Halflings do get confused with dwarves a lot, but they are very different, so let's not be racist over here. Your halflings are going to start with a base racial speed of 7.5 meters, so it is a slower race just like dwarves. However, you get the lucky ability. When you roll a 1 for an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can re-roll the die, and you must use the new roll. So very rarely when you're playing as a halfling are you going to get a crit failure on an attack roll or an ability check, because you'll be able to re-roll it. So it is a very nice feature to have. In addition, you are brave as a halfling. You have advantage on saving throws against being frightened. Now the frightened condition isn't super common, but it does come up in the game. So it is nice to have because it can be a detrimenting condition if your entire party is frightened. Now, the Lightfoot Halfling, the two subclasses we have available here, the Lightfoot will give you advantage on stealth checks. So Lightfoot Halflings are very good at, again, being rogues or rangers or other classes that want to rely on stealth. A Strongheart Halfling will give you advantage on saving throws against poison and resistance to poison damage. So just as it is with your Dwarven ability, of poison resistance, this kind of transfers over to the halfling now. So that will give you innate resistances to poisons. So only real differences between them there, aside from their lore. Then we move on to gnomes. Gnomes are very similar looking to halflings, but they got a little bit longer arms. They're kind of uh, uh, appendages are oddly proportioned, and they have pointy ears. So that's usually the best way to determine the difference between gnomes and halflings. You just look for the pointy ears. Gnomes will have a base movement speed of 7.5 meters per turn, and they have advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. This is massive. You have advantage on all 3 of your mental ailment saving throws. So it is very hard for gnomes to get mental ailments. And having advantage on all 3 of them is pretty big. So you only get 1 positive feature for being a gnome, but it more than makes up for the downside of your lower movement speed just from that alone. Now we go on to the sub races that are available. We have a rock gnome, forest gnome, and deep gnome. Rock gnome has dark vision up to 12 meters, and you add twice your proficiency bonus to history checks. So as a rock gnome, you'll be very good at the history of the world, and you'll likely pass most of your history checks playing as a rock gnome. As a forest gnome, you maintain your dark vision just like you got with your rock gnome, but instead of having proficiency with history checks, you are allowed to speak with animals. Now, there is other ways you can speak with animals, such as playing as a druid, or even potions that you can consume will allow you to speak with animals. But it is nice if you want to just start at level 1 with the ability to speak with any dog or bird you come across. So that will always be there for you as a forest gnome. Now, as a deep gnome, you will get superior dark vision, so it is improved dark vision from the forest and rock gnome. Same as Drow and same as Dwegar, you can see in the dark up to 24 meters. And then you also will have advantage on stealth checks. So you can see in the dark from very far. In addition, it's going to be harder for people to see you. So a deep gnome, again, is a great choice for a stealth-based class. Moving on, we go to Dragonborn, one of the coolest looking races you have here. And Dragonborns are going to have the most amount of subclasses to pick from, or sub-races to pick from here. But it's mostly just based off of the color and the ancestry of their dragon nature. Your only base racial feature is that you move at 9 meters, just like everyone else. All of your other features are based off of your subrace. So if you are a black, blue, brass, bronze, copper, gold, green, red, silver, or white dragonborn, several different to pick from. That one looks kind of freaky. Look at that. Yikes. Bronze, copper, gold, green. We can see all of them here. So all these will basically tell you that you will get a resistance to an element type based off of your dragonborn heritage. If you're a black dragon, you get resistance to acid damage, and you can spit acid breath on people. And this damage increases as you level up. It will go up to a 3d6 die, and I believe it goes up to a 46 die after that. So you'll do increased damage with it, but it's pretty good starting at level 1. They will have to make a save, and if they succeed the save, they still take half damage. So if someone's at 1 health, it is a guaranteed way to finish off an enemy if you're within range. Sorry, I'm having some indigestion problems here. So black's got acid as our resistance and our breath. Blue is electric, resistance to lightning damage, and a lightning breath. Brass is going to be fire. Bronze is lightning. Copper is acid. Gold is fire. Green is the only one for poison, so if you want poison, that's a good one to take. However, poison damage is not really the best damage type, so if you're looking for your poison breath, because there's a lot of undead in this game, and undead are usually going to be completely immune to poison. Red is going to be fire, silver is cold, and white is also going to be cold. And that's all we have for Dragonborn. They don't have a lot of features, but more than anything, people just want to play them because, let's be honest, they just look awesome. And there's a great amount of customization you can do with them. Now, I won't be going into customization for characters in terms of appearance in this video. I'm just talking about building the character. If there's enough demand for it, I can give a full breakdown on how to do appearance customization at a later point. Then we move on to Half-Orc as our final race to pick from. Half-Orcs are a brutish-looking race, of course. They are half human and half orc. They have a base movement speed of 9 meters per turn, 12 meter dark vision, like most of the races get. Also, Dragonborn does not get dark vision. Relentless Endurance is a great ability. It makes you very tanky as a half-orc. If you reach 0 hit points, you instead regain 1 hit point instead of becoming down. So you can hold out for an extra turn, and that could be the difference between winning or losing a fight sometimes. In addition to that, you get Savage Attacks. When you land a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, that's when you roll a 20 on a d20 die for your roll to hit a target, then you will deal an extra dice of weapon damage. Now, for this very reason, half-orcs are amazing as paladins, because when you are playing as a paladin, when you get a critical hit on a target, you can use a reaction to Divine Smite them, and you will also add in your extra die of weapon damage. So you'll just be doing a huge amount of damage all at once on a critical hit with a half-orc, especially if you're playing as a paladin. And we'll get into what reactions are and more about paladin here in a second. So that's all of our races we got. Then we're going to move into classes here. We're going to start from the top here. Let's go back to our high elf girl here. We'll kind of show the classes. We got Barbarian. Barbarian is going to be a pretty simple class for you to start with to learn. It is going to give you all weapon proficiencies and simple and martial weapons. You can use any weapon in the game. You'll be proficient with light armor, medium armor, and shields. Now, you will not have proficiency in heavy armor because you don't want to be wearing heavy armor as a barbarian, because the main feature of a barbarian is you are going to want to use your rage ability. You cannot rage when you are using heavy armor. When you are raging, you will deal 2 extra damage with any melee and improvised weapon attack and throwing weapons. You must attack an enemy during your turn, or they must attack you, or you will lose your rage. Raging costs a bonus action to do. So you can still use your bonus action and then swing your weapon during the same turn, since swinging your weapon costs a main action. And then when you are raging, you will also take half damage from all physical damage. If it's piercing, slashing, or bludgeoning damage, you will take half damage from it. And then you will have unarmored defense. When you are not wearing armor, you will add your Constitution modifier in addition to your Dex modifier to your armor class. So this means that when you're not wearing armor, if you have a high Constitution score and a high Dexterity score, you're still going to have a good armor class. You'll still be dodging some attacks. Now, as you level up more, you might want to consider still wearing medium armor, because there is some medium armor in this game that's going to provide very good AC, and it's going to outweigh the bonuses of your Constitution bonus that you're getting from not wearing armor. Barbarians will pick a subclass at level 3, which I will leave that to you to figure out what you want to do with that, since we're just looking at level 1 characters here. But they will have 3 subclasses to pick from. You will have the Berserker, you will have your Animal Heart, the Totem Barbarian, I forget what they call it exactly, and then you will have Wild Magic Barbarian. Moving on, we have the Bard. A Bard is a full caster, so they will be gaining the most amount of spells from every level up. In addition, Clerics, Druids, Wizards, and Sorcerers are all full casters as well. By full casters, that means that magic is going to be your most important tool with these classes. Now, if you're playing as a Ranger or a Paladin, you are a half caster. So you'll be mixing a lot of melee fighting and magic together. And then you have 1/3 casters, which would be fighter and rogue. There's a subclass for fighter and rogue that you can pick at level 3, which we'll discuss when we get to them. That will allow you to do some magic casting, but not much. But moving back to Bard here, Bards are going to be best for your support for the team. Bards are extremely versatile. They will allow you to get expertise inside some abilities. They are great for healers, they're great for damage, they're great for causing conditions on enemies. They're basically they're going to do whatever gap is missing in your party, they'll be able to fill that in. So they're great to pick in any party, but they don't exactly excel at any one thing, but they will cover grounds for whatever you need. They will have 3 subclasses. You have the College of Swords, the College of Lore, and the College of Valor. Moving on to Cleric. Cleric is, just as it sounds, is going to be a lot focused on holy magic. You can pick your deity as a cleric, your god that you worship. This is the only class you can do that with. It used to be in early access that Paladin could do that as well. But in full release, Cleric is the only one that can pick their deity, and there are several deities here to pick from. I'm not going to go through all of them here, or this video will end up being 10 hours long. But you can read through the description on each of the gods here, and whatever god you pick will unlock some unique dialogue for you in certain encounters. But it does not have an effect on your abilities. It's just flavor for your character and for interactions with people you meet across the world. Now, clerics will have 7 subclasses to pick from right from the beginning. You don't pick a subclass at level 3. You start right from the beginning. You pick your cleric domain. The life domain is going to be for what most people are going to assume what a cleric is. It's going to be your healing subclass. If you want to be the group healer, this is the one to pick. You will start with 2 domain spells, Cure Wounds and Bless. These aren't the best domain spells to start with because other clerics already have access to this. But regardless, you'll still have these always prepared, which means you can pick other spells from your cleric spell list if you want to add those in addition to this. But the biggest feature you're going to get is that you can wear heavy armor with this cleric. Most clerics can only wear medium armor. And you will have Disciple of Life. Your devotion empowers your healing spells. When casting a healing spell, the target regains additional hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level. That can be pretty massive depending on the level of the spell you're casting. If you're casting a level 6 healing spell that is healing the entire party, like Mass Cure Wounds, then everyone's going to get 8 more hit points. And that can add up, and it can be really beneficial. Then we move on to the light domain. The light domain gets light as a cantrip, very fitting. You don't have to worry about picking light as a cantrip, you just get it by default. And your domain spells are going to be Burning Hands, which you cannot learn as other clerics, and Fairy Fire, which is also unique to the light domain. And your subclass feature is a very good one. It is Warding Flare. You will shield yourself with Divine Light. You can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on an attacker, possibly causing their attack to miss. So Warding Flare will consume your reaction and make it so that it is much less likely that the enemy is going to hit you. So light domains can be very slippery targets to hit. For that reason, they're a good pick, and they have a very good Channel Divinity spell that they learned at level 2. Trickery Domain is unfortunately probably going to be the weakest to pick, but you can still make it work because clerics themselves are a great class to play. So even if you're playing as a weak subclass, you're still going to excel if you're playing your cards right. But unfortunately, with the Trickery Domain, the benefits you get from other subclasses just outweigh the benefits you get with the Trickery Domain. But we'll still go over some of it here. As a free action, you can grant advantage on stealth checks to any person in your party. It will maintain your concentration on that. So if you cast another spell that requires concentration, you will lose this ability in replacement for the one that you just casted. So you cannot maintain Bless or Shield of Faith or other spells that require concentration while you're concentrating on Blessing of the Trickster. For that reason, it's not that good of ability. If it did not require concentration, it would be amazing, and it would immediately bump the trickery domain up a tier uh, from where it's at currently. You will learn Charm Person as a trickery domain spell, and you will have Disguise Self. I've never really had a use for Disguise Self other than speaking to the dead. You want to disguise yourself when you're speaking to the people that you just killed, because they tend to not want to talk to their killers. So it's useful for that purpose, but other than that, unless you're wanting to role play as someone that is constantly switching faces, it's just not that great of a spell, unfortunately. Moving on from Trickery Domain, we go on to the Knowledge Domain. Knowledge Domain is quite interesting. You kind of dip into a little bit of the wizard spell list. Knowledge clerics, they value knowledge very much, of course, and so do wizards. So they share some similarities. You will get additional proficiencies and intelligence-based skills as a knowledge domain cleric, and you will learn command as a level 1 spell and sleep as a level 1 spell. Both are very useful spells. Command in particular is one of the best spells in the game, and it continues to be useful up until high levels, because it's a spell that upcasts higher the spell levels very, very well. Then we go on to the Nature Domain. Nature Domain is going to be kind of a mixture between a druid and a cleric. Obviously, your deity might want to be nature aligned, like a god of the forest or something. You will get Shillelagh as a cantrip. Shillelagh is going to turn any staff or club into a magical base weapon. It will deal additional damage and use your spellcasting ability for your attack rolls. It costs a bonus action to cast in the last 10 turns, so it can turn any old club or staff or whatever wooden piece of gear you're using into something that can be quite devastating. You will learn Speak with Animals, and you will have Animal Friendship. Speak with Animals is much more useful than Animal Friendship. I have about 1,000 hours in this game, and I don't think there's a single time that I've ever used Animal Friendship. I'm just being honest, I just don't think it's worth taking. There's many other ways you can handle animal encounters. You don't need to waste a spell slot charming them. The subclass feature, you will learn a druid cantrip and become proficient in animal handling, nature, or survival. So I guess technically you don't have to pick Shillelagh, because this is part of this subclass feature here. You could change this out to Thorn Whip, and as you would see, this is the new cantrip that we have. So that's basically what this is here, and you will get additional proficiencies and some wisdom-based skills. Moving on to the Tempest Domain. This is a domain where you're going to have heavy armor. The Light, Trickery, Knowledge, and Nature Domain do not have heavy armor. Life does. Tempest Domain also has heavy armor. In addition, you will have proficiency in martial weapons. So Tempest Domain clerics can use all armor and all weapons in the game without any downsides. You will learn Thunder Wave as a first level spell, and Fog Cloud. Now, you guys can check out these spells when you're doing your character creation. I don't want to go through every spell in the game, because we'll just make the video too long at that point. But the subclass feature as a Tempest Domain cleric is you'll be using your reaction to strike back at an attacking creature, dealing 2 to 16 lightning damage or 2 to 16 thunder damage. The target will still take half damage on a successful saving throw. This can be a very, very good reaction if your target is wet. It will take double the damage from lightning damage, so that turns this 2 to 16 into 4 to 32. And dealing 4 to 32 damage on a reaction is pretty nuts. So Tempest Domain can be very, very good, especially if you're pairing it with a Storm Sorcerer multi-class. I just finished a very hard difficulty, the Tactician playthrough, using a multi-class between Storm Sorcerer and Tempest Domain Cleric. And multi-classing is something that we'll also get into with another video. Moving on to the last cleric domain here, we have the war domain. War domain is going to also give you heavy armor and martial weapons, so they can use all armor and all weapons in the game. You will have Divine Favor as a spell that you'll learn for War Domain, and Shield of Faith. Your subclass feature will allow you to make a bonus action attack, consuming a War Priest charge, which you only get a set amount of them. I think it's 4 to start with, maybe 3. I think it's 4, but I'm not quite sure. At level 1, and that goes up the more levels that you do. So you can utilize your bonus action to attack again, which is very, very good. In addition to that, at level 2, you get one of the best channel divinity abilities in the game, which adds a flat plus 10 to hit on a enemy. So if you roll a 4 and the enemy's AC is 13, you'll still hit them with that channel divinity ability. Personally, I think the War Domain is the strongest cleric subclass in the game, unless you're using Tempest. And I would say that Light and Life are probably the next best ones, but War and Tempest, S tier, Light and Life, A tier, Knowledge, Nature, B tier, and Trickery is probably C tier. But Cleric, as a class itself, is S tier. Cleric is one of the best classes to pick. They're extremely versatile and can dish out huge amounts of damage, be great support for the party, and even be durable as well, with having high AC with heavy armor and shields. Moving on to the Druid. The Druid is a very fun class to play, very nature-based, as you could expect. They don't have any subclasses at level 1, but you will be picking a subclass at level 2. We have the... I forget what they're called, but there's one that is purely based off of land druid. I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Land druid is going to be your most specific class focused on magic. So if you want to have the best spell casting that you can get, you're going to go with a land druid. Moon druids will increase your ability to wild shape. You'll be able to make additional attacks. Not additional attacks, but you'll be able to transform into a beast as a bonus action instead of using your regular action, so you can transform and attack during the same turn. In addition to that, I think there's some extra wild shape options that you get as a Moon Druid. So if you want to spend most of your time as an animal, then a Moon Druid is going to be the best option for you. And then you have a Spore Druid, which is going to be a kind of a mixture between increasing your melee adaptability. It's going to add necrotic damage to your melee weapon attacks. And you'll also kind of be able to dabble into some necromancy. You're going to use your spores that you naturally accumulate from your communion with fungus and everything to create fungal zombies, which is disgusting, but it is very, very powerful to create an army of undead to fight alongside you. And it really starts to take off at later levels. So Druid is a great class to pick, another very adaptability class. Cleric, Bard, and Druid, all great for adapting to any situation. They're full spellcasters, so you're going to get many, many spells with them. The one downside about a Druid is most of its spells require concentration. So you will have to kind of pick and choose what spells you're going to be currently concentrating on, because you're going to be dropping concentration and switching between spells a lot. Moving on to the Fighter. Fighter is probably the most default upfront fighter that you can think. I mean, they're basically just a person with a sword and shield, or a battle axe, or a greatsword that's just going to run up and hit something. Sounds kind of boring, but it can be really, really fun depending on the way you're playing it. A fighter's going to get, obviously, proficiency in every weapon in the game, simple and martial weapons. And you got all of your armor, light, medium, heavy, and shields. You'll get your subclass at level 3, which will either be Battle Master. Battle Master allows you to incorporate a mixture of new abilities into your fighting, like tripping your enemy with your sword, or you can push them backwards, or you can even do a riposte strike when they miss and hit them back with your reaction. You can add temporary hit points to your allies. There's a lot of adaptability that the Battlemaster subclass offers. The Champion subclass is going to basically just improve your already existing abilities just a little slightly more. You'll be able to get critical hits on a 19 instead of just a 20, so it almost doubles your chances of getting a critical, since you are now having a 10% chance of getting a critical instead of a 5% chance. In addition, I think you get increased jumping speed, so you can jump further. So the champion is kind of just going to improve upon what you already got for your base fighter class. And then, as we discussed earlier, there is the Eldritch Knight. The Eldritch Knight will dabble a little bit into magic. So if you want to kind of be a little bit of a spell blade, an Eldritch Knight is going to be a great option for you. One thing to keep in mind is if you are being an Eldritch Knight, you want to have a decent intelligence score, because your spells are going to scale off of your intelligence. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention is that Bard is going to have Charisma as their spellcasting ability, so you want to have high Charisma as a Bard, and a Cleric and a Druid are going to want to have high Wisdom, because Wisdom is their spellcasting ability. Fighters will get Second Wind at level 1, which will allow them to regain some of their own health as a bonus action to help them stay in the fight a little bit longer. At level 2, you're going to get Action Surge, which is a very potent ability that is going to give you an additional action once per short rest to swing your sword one more time to take down an enemy. So that will allow the fighter to be a really quick and responding frontline fighter. No pun intended. Now we got the Monk. The Monk is a very unique class. As you can see, they're kind of focused on like Kung Fu, the inner peace. They attack with staves or with their bare fist. Monks have many interesting abilities. You want to kind of have a high wisdom with your monk, in addition to high dexterity. Monks have a ability called Ki, which will allow them to do many different things, such as punching their enemy with flurry of blows. As a bonus action, you can punch your enemy twice in quick succession. So if you want to just beat the crap out of an enemy with your fist, a monk is a great option for that. In addition, you have unarmored defense. While not wearing armor, you can add your wisdom modifier to your armor class. So just like how the barbarian adds the constitution modifier, you're going to add your wisdom modifier. So while you're just wearing these monk robes here, you'll still have decent armor if you have high dexterity and high wisdom. Your movement speed is going to be increased when you are not wearing armor. Your attacks with your monk weapons and unarmed attacks will deal 1 to 4 bludgeoning damage unless the normal damage is higher. And after making an attack with a monk weapon or while unarmed, you can make another unarmed attack as a bonus action. So instead of punching twice using a key point, you can just punch once or kick them once, depending on whatever weapon you're using. So you're always going to have a use for your bonus action as a monk, which is very nice. At monk level 3, you will get to choose your subclass. You have Way of the Open Hand, which is probably the most powerful one. It's going to improve upon your base abilities as a monk. Your punches can push targets away, they can trip them and knock them over, or they can stagger them where you can just walk around them without getting an opportunity attack on yourself. Or you can do Way of the Shadow. Way of the Shadow is going to be kind of a stealthy monk. It's going to incorporate some rogue-like abilities into your kit. Or you got Way of the Four Elements, which is going to kind of turn your monk into a little bit of a spellcaster. And you'll get some unique spells with Way of the Four Elements that are exclusive just to monk that no other class can use. So some of those are really worth checking out if you're interested in that subclass. Moving on to the Paladin. Paladin is going to be a strength-based class, and they're going to use Charisma as their spellcasting modifier. They are a half-caster, like I mentioned earlier. One important thing about the Paladins is you will have oaths that you need to follow, or you will become an Oathbreaker. And an Oathbreaker is a unique subclass that I will leave as a surprise to you. It's kind of more of a dark route for a paladin. Some may say it's even an evil character, depending on the way you're role playing it. But regardless, if you want to maintain your oath, you'll have a book of tenets that you have to read, and you want to abide by those rules, or you could risk losing your paladin subclass and trading it out for an oathbreaker. Paladin's biggest feature that they're going to get is called Divine Smite. As mentioned earlier, it's kind of a huge one damage drop, so it's great for melting bosses. You can toggle it as a reaction to use as a critical hit. So again, a half orc paladin, I've played that before, can just be devastating for like big damage all at once. As a paladin, you will get an option at level 1 to pick your oath. You have either the Oath of the Ancients, which is kind of like a druid-based paladin. You're sworn to protect the side of light and the cosmic struggles against darkness to preserve the sanctity of life and the beauty of nature. So anything that is going to go against protecting nature, you want to avoid doing. You want to be a guardian of nature and defend it. The Oath of the Ancients is going to be kind of more of a healing focused subclass for Paladin. You get Healing Radiance, which allows you to heal yourself and all nearby allies for 5 hit points. This will scale up at higher levels so that it does more healing. And then you will gain an additional 5 hit points next turn. So it's got a delayed trickle effect, which can really help if you got your party bunched up next to you. And then you got your subclass features. These are just your oath of your tenets for each of the kindle the light through acts of kindness, and kindle the light of hope in the bleakest hollows of despair. Shelter the light where love blooms. Stand against the devilry that would snip its stem. Preserve your own light, delight in culture, and small joys to preserve the light in your own heart. Stuff that you want to do when you're playing as an Oath of the Ancients paladin. Then we go on to the Oath of Devotion. Oath of Devotion is kind of like what you'd expect your standard heroic paladin to be. They're sworn to protect the innocent and the good and the small people. They're less focused on nature and more just about just helping people and upholding justice and everything. They're going to be kind of the more support focused paladin subclass. Not so much healing as Oath of the Ancients is, but more just providing defensive buffs to your party. They will get Holy Rebuke. You can grant an ally a Vengeful Aura that deals 1 to 4 radiant damage to anyone who hits them with a melee attack. And then you got your devotions here. Courage, stride dauntlessly into action. Compassion, show clemency when prudent, and lend your arm to those in need. Duty, tend your responsibilities, obey just laws, and support those entrusted to your care. Then we have the Oath of the Vengeance. Very, very dark looking paladin here, as you can see. This kind of leans more towards the evil paladin, but they're not necessarily evil. But essentially an Oath of Vengeance paladin is the type of paladin that is going to strike down someone at all costs, even if it harms other people. Their goal is to protect the greater good. You have set aside even your own purity to right wrongs and deliver justice to those who have committed the most grievous sins. So your goal is to strike down people regardless of how you get there. It's going to get done. They're more of a melee, DPS focused paladin. They're going to probably bring out the most damage for you, but they're not going to support your party as much as the other subclasses would. You will get Inquisitor's Might. You or an ally's weapon attacks deal an additional 2 radiant damage and can daze enemies for 1 turn. You will fight the greater evil, exerting your wisdom, identify the higher morality in any given instance, and fight for it. No mercy for the wicked, chasten those who dole out their villainy by wiping their blight from the world forever. And as we mentioned, there is a 4th subclass called the Oathbreaker, but you will not be able to pick that at level 1. If you're interested in trying out that subclass, you would have to break your oath first, and then you will get to see what that subclass has to experience, or what it has to offer. So moving on from the Paladin, we go on to the Ranger. The Ranger is going to be a Wisdom and Dexterity focused class primarily. You can also use Strength if you'd like. Rangers are going to be half casters. They are good at tracking, and they get some spells that are unique to them. Rangers will get 3 subclasses at level 3. You can either be a Hunter, which is going to kind of improve upon your base abilities as a Ranger. You can get a Gloomstalker, which is going to provide a more rogue-like offer to your ranger. Uh, excuse me. Need to get a drink of water. So the Gloomstalker is going to kind of make you more of a shadow ranger. Gloomstalkers kind of come from the Underdark, and they thrive in dark environments. You get increased dark vision. Even if you're playing as a human, you'll get 24 meters of dark vision right away just from being a Gloomstalker. So it's a good way to offset those weaknesses for classes that don't have dark vision. In addition to that, you get some other spells that you can use, like Misty Step. They're a very fun subclass to play for Ranger. I'd highly recommend it. And then you also get Beastmaster. So for Beastmaster, if you've ever wanted to fight with a animal beside you, that is the subclass to pick for you at level 3. It will allow you to summon an animal companion to fight at your side, and that animal companion will also scale with your levels to be better as you level up. Eventually, they'll get a lot of health, better armor, and more abilities. The only downside to a Beastmaster is you yourself are not going to get like any increased things. You're not going to learn new spells as a Beastmaster or new abilities. It's all based off of what your companion is learning, and your companion has an extra health bar to distract enemies. They're another unit in combat, so that alone makes them very powerful. But it does kind of, the one downside is that you yourself don't feel like you've increased much in power. But still very fun and worth taking if you want to try out combat with an animal fighting at your side. Then we move on to Rogue. Rogue is a very common one that people know, even if they've not played 5th edition D&D. Most people know what a Rogue is. They're going to be the ones that are going to sneak up behind people, stab them with a dagger, or shoot them with an arrow from across the screen and surprise them without them even seeing it. Rogues are going to get a lot of abilities that they can pick from right away. They get Expertise, which is going to double their ability that they choose. They can do Sneak Attack when an enemy is engaged with another target, which would be a friendly target, so it has to be someone on your team or an ally. You can Sneak Attack them to do additional damage to them, or if you have advantage on them, such as from hiding, you can Sneak Attack as well. Rogues only start with light armor proficiency, but the one benefit that they have is that they have a high dexterity score, so they really don't need medium armor or heavy armor. It would be nice if they started with shields as a proficiency, but that probably would make them overpowered. You're not going to have a huge AC as a rogue because you're not wanting to get hit a lot. You're going to be wanting to hide a lot. You will start with 3 subclasses at level 3 for the rogue. You can start with the Thief at level 3, which is going to give you an additional bonus action, which is going to be great for helping you dash into combat, since rogues can dash as a bonus action starting at level 2, or you can disengage from combat and get away from enemies quickly at level 2 as well. You'll learn that. With that additional bonus action, it allows for some more flexibility, and if you're using 2 weapons, you can use that additional bonus action for an offhand weapon attack. Thief is a very good subclass to pick. Then you also have Assassin. Assassin, as it sounds, is going to be all about doing the most damage that you can do before combat even starts. When you do your initial strike against an enemy as an assassin, it will always be a critical hit. It will, as long as it hits them, it will be a critical hit. And then you will also regain that lost action that you spent initiating combat right at the beginning of combat, so you can attack again as an assassin. So assassins are great for killing off a target right before the battle even starts. The only downside about an assassin is once the battle gets going and you're a turn or 2 into the battle, then you really have no additional features past that point. So assassins are going to be best if mostly fighting outside of combat. If you can keep an assassin hidden in the dark with invisibility or greater invisibility, they can make combats stupidly easy if you know how to keep them hidden with invisibility potions or high stealth modifiers. So really good to pair assassins with like deep gnomes or Dwagar or maybe even Drow for that increased dark vision, or even Wood Elves for that natural stealth proficiency. Then we have our Arcane Trickster. Arcane Trickster is going to be a rogue that wants to dabble a little bit into magic. You will get some illusion-based spells that are going to manipulate the mind of your enemy. I think that Arcane Trickster is a fun class to play, but I will admit that I think it's one of the more weaker rogue classes. I think as a rogue, it's best to focus on what you're already good at instead of trying to branch out into doing some magic, but it can still offer some nice magical opportunities if you don't want to be a full-on wizard. You will also get that invisible mage hand, just like the Githyanki have, if you want to toss some poisons at enemies or do other shenanigans with your invisible spectral hand that's floating around. Sorry, I had to get another sip of water again. I underestimated how much talking this would take. Moving on from Rogue, we're going on to Sorcerer. Sorcerer is another charisma-based spellcaster. Many of you might wonder what the difference is between a sorcerer and a wizard. They sound the same. You know, they're both magical people. A sorcerer is going to be someone that is born with latent magic already inside them. A wizard is going to be someone that has learned magic over the course of years of study through reading books and tomes. So sorcerers are going to start with your subclass. You're going to either be wild magic. Wild magic is a subclass where the torrents of magic that flow through you, the ancient forces of chaos, all of these things are just wanting to burst free at any point. You'll get the Tides of Chaos ability, which you can activate at any time of your choosing. It will gain you advantage on your next attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. Doing so will give you a chance of something called a Wild Magic Surge happening. The Wild Magic Surge is an unruly magic sparks and fizzes through your veins. For sorcerers, each time you cast a spell of level 1 or higher, your magic might surge and trigger a random magical effect. For Wild Magic Barbarian, each time you rage, a random magical effect will trigger. So these can cause things that are going to help your party or hinder your party. It's very chaotic, but very, very fun. If you're playing in high difficulties, I wouldn't highly recommend it because the negative effects that it can cause you to lose the battle. But if you're just playing on a normal difficulty or with a group of friends, it can be a ton of fun to see what kind of crazy things you come up with. If you cast a fly spell, you might just turn into a sheep, and then you're a flying sheep. So totally worth it if you never tried it before. Wild Magic is a good one to go for. Then we got Draconic Bloodline. As you can see, Draconic Bloodline is going to give you some scales to pick from on your character. It's the only class aside from Barbarian. Barbarian later levels, you can pick some unique piercings that you can put on your character. But for the Draconic Sorcerer here, you can pick these colored scales since you come from a Draconic Bloodline that are going to go onto your face. And you can even... if I go into edit appearance here, you can even change the scales right here, and you can change the color of them too. So that looks kind of interesting right there, right? So as a Draconic Sorcerer, you're going to inherit some Draconic abilities since you got that dragon blood in your veins. You're going to have an increased hit point maximum by 1 for each level. So you'll basically be a more tanky spellcaster because you're going to be having more health than any wizard would start with. In addition to that, Draconic-like skills cover parts of your skin. When you aren't wearing armor, your base armor class is 13. Now, your default armor class is going to be 10 for all other races and classes. So starting at 13 means you're already 3 above everyone else. In addition to that, it's going to scale off of your dexterity, and then if you have an option to use a shield at a later point, then you will also, which you don't start with a shield proficiency, but you can learn that through like feats and things like that later on. So you could actually, as a Draconic Sorcerer, still have pretty good armor class just from wearing your robes if you manage to play your character right. Then we move on to Storm Sorcery. Storm Sorcery is going to be all about the, did that change? Look at that. The robes changed from green to blue. And this is red. I never noticed that. I have 1,000 hours in this game and I never noticed that the colors of the robes change. Anyways, moving on. The Storm Sorcery is going to be a subclass that's going to focus all about the crackling energy of ancient deluges, pierced by gales and hurricanes. Your lineage is a strange tapestry scrawled by a tempest of storms, and you're very focused on lightning magic and other things like that. So again, this is a great class to take if you're going to be playing as a Tempest Cleric. You can multi-class into this, and there's other good multi-class options like you could be the Ranger and the Rogue are a good multi-class. You could be the Assassin plus the Gloomstalker Ranger. You can do Fighter and Barbarian are good multi-class options. All things to consider. But when you're playing as a Storm Sorcerer, you get Tempestuous Magic. After you cast a level 1 spell or higher, you can fly as a bonus action until the end of your turn without receiving any opportunity attacks. So this will allow for some great maneuverability as a sorcerer. And you get some additional lightning spells that you will inherently know just from being a Storm Sorcerer. It's all sorcerer subclasses are viable and very fun to play. I've played as all three of them, and Sorcerer is probably one of the best classes to play if you're just looking for a fun time. Moving on from Sorcerer, we go on to Warlock. Warlock is a very unique spellcaster. They only get a small amount of spells that they can cast per short rest, but then they recover them on a short rest. Whereas sorcerers, wizards, druids, all other spellcasters have to take a long rest. They have to spend the night sleeping to recover or meditating as an elf to get their spell slots back. A sorcerer can just wait an hour and they'll get their spell back from their patron that is granting them these benefits. Warlocks are drawing their power not from within themselves or from years of study, but instead from other clients that they sign pacts with that are going to lend their powers to them. As a sorcerer, you get these Warlock spell slots. Again, they're the ones that recover on a short rest. You get the cantrip Eldritch Blast, which is an extremely powerful tool for a Warlock. And you will also, at later levels, get Eldritch Invocations, which are going to be additional features that your patron is going to grant you for being in a pact with them. One really good feature is one called Devil's Sight, which is going to make it so that you can see through all darkness and magical darkness. So as earlier in the video when I mentioned that darkness is a very good spell for warlocks, you can drop darkness right on yourself as a warlock and still attack people within it without being blinded, because your eyes are honed from this gift from your patron to see through the dark. Now, of course, that's only if you select that as one of your Eldritch Invocations. There's a whole list of them that you'll see when you get to level 2 with the Warlock, which I can make a more in-depth guide with the Warlock class itself and other classes as well moving forward, but we're just kind of hitting general details here for our first video on character creation. Now, as a Warlock, you will get 3 subclasses to pick from. You get the Fiend. The Fiend is you pledge your soul to the hells of the abyss and return for a deadly arsenal of fiendish arcana. Now, just because you're pledged to serve a devil or some other hellish creature from the abyss does not mean that you're an evil character. You're just doing the whims of what this patron wants. You may do some evil actions against your will, but you could still serve to try and make the world a better place by using these powers that this devil's giving you. You will get Dark One's Blessing for this subclass. When you reduce a hostile creature to 0 hit points, the gift from your patron grants you 4 temporary hit points. Now, this is true at level 1, but the one thing that it does not mention here is that this is basically scaling off of your character level and your charisma modifier. So if you have a charisma modifier of +5 and you're level 12, you're going to get 17 hit points back instead of just 4. So it can get to be massive amounts at later levels. So it's a very good subclass feature. Then we go on to the Great Old One. You pledge something unthinkable to an unspeakably ancient entity, which in return furnishes you with powers of cerebral entropy and control. The Great Old One is going to give you Mortal Reminder as a subclass feature, When you land a critical hit against a creature, that creature and any nearby enemies must succeed a wisdom saving throw or become frightened until the end of their next turn. This does not happen often since critical hits are pretty rare, but when it does happen, it feels really good. So it is a nice feature to have for those few moments when you do land a critical. It can be a tide turner for the battle. Then we got probably what's going to be the weakest sorcerer subclass, but it's still a pretty fun one to play, which is going to be the Archfey. Graced by a lady or lord of the Fey, you're imbued with all the sumptuous and scary qualities of your patron's extraordinary realm. Archfays are going to be good for manipulation, getting your enemies frightened, or getting them to fall in love with you by using your charms or this otherworldly scary stuff that the Fey can conjure up. You get Fey presence, charm or frighten nearby foes. With the Feywild's beguiling and disturbing magics, you can either use the charm feature or the frighten one. You get to pick when you use that. Now, I can't remember if I mentioned it already, but warlocks are a charisma-based class, so you want to have very high charisma when you're doing a warlock. Dexterity is probably going to be also a good focus for you. And then you're going to start with light armor. So unlike other spellcasters, you do have a little bit of armor you can use with sorcerers. Or not, with warlocks. But definitely considering that light armor is not that great, you might want to consider getting medium armor at a later point. Or you can use an Eldritch Invocation for Armor of Shadows, which will allow you to cast Mage Armor for free and get you some better dexterity or some better armor class when you're not wearing armor. Moving on from the Warlock, our last class here is going to be the Wizard. Another classic that most people have heard of, even if they've not played Dungeons and Dragons. You're the person that's reading books and you're learning spells, and you have a spell book, and you're mostly going to be a very intelligent, nerdy type of person. Your intelligence score is going to want to be your highest here. Wizards are going to learn several subclasses that you can pick from a level 2. I don't remember all of them, and I don't think I could even have the time to go through all of them, because there's basically you can master any school of magic that you choose, and they'll have different benefits related to that subclass. So you could be a necromancer, you can be an evocation wizard, which is going to be the best if you're just looking for pure damage. Evocation spells are going to be like when you're throwing out fire, lightning, thunder, ice, that kind of stuff. Then you got divination wizards, which are going to manipulate time and the energy around that. All kinds of stuff. Enchantment wizards wizards are going to be very, very versatile. You can scribe spells into your spell book by spending a little bit of gold, and you'll be able to prepare spells each day. You can recover spells as you're journeying until you take a long rest by using an action for your arcane recovery charge. If you're wanting to just be the person that's just slinging out spells left and right, you're going to want to probably be a wizard or a sorcerer. Wizards are not going to start with any armor proficiency, just like how sorcerers don't have any armor proficiency. You don't have really any dagger or any weapon proficiencies. You just have daggers, quarter staffs, and like light crossbows. The only reason why I have these is because I'm playing as an elf here, but you're always just going to have daggers, quarterstaffs, and light crossbows. So that's all of our classes there. So now we're going to move on to background. When you're playing your background here, you get to pick kind of like the story of your custom character. You can be an acolyte, charlatan, criminal, entertainer, folk hero, guild artisan, noble, outlander, sage, soldier, or urchin. And you'll get a description of each of these here for you to read to determine like if it fits with the kind of the story that you're wanting to play with your character. And each one of these backgrounds is going to give you 2 skills that you will naturally inherit from that background, such as charlatan will give you deception and sleight of hand. Or if I want to be a noble, I'll be good with persuasion and history. Or if I want to be an entertainer, I can be good with acrobatics and performance. So it's up to you to just kind of pick these and read through which one seems the most fitting for your character. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just whatever you think is going to fit best for your story for the game that you want to play. Last thing we move on to here is the abilities. This is going to probably be, next to picking your class, the most important thing you're going to want to do when you're building your character. You will probably want to start by unselecting these bonuses here so you can just see where you're at by default here. And I like to set everything to 8, the lowest it can go, and build from there. So let's say I'm building a fighter here. Fighters are going to want to have high strength. So we're going to bump this strength up maybe as high as we can go. We cap it out at 15. That's as high as it will let us go. Then we can add +2 to that. And this brings it to 17. Then we can have our strength go up to 14. Maybe we want some good wisdom so we don't have bad wisdom saving throws, so we're not super subject to mental ailments. Then maybe some decent dexterity, so we got a good initiative score. And then maybe I want to have some good charisma too, so like I can intimidate people. Now, naturally, you're going to have one score that's going to be very low. They usually call that a dump stat. It is a stat that you're probably not going to put any investment into because it's not going to be important to you. If I'm playing as a fighter, I probably don't need high intelligence. One thing to keep in mind when you're assigning your ability points is that you only get the positive value of that score when it's at an even number. So if I have 17 strength, it's going to be the exact same as if I have 16 strength, because these are going to be rounded down into your ability modifier. So if I have 8 to 9 strength, it's going to be a -1, which let's go ahead and let's do it on dexterity, since I don't have proficiency in dexterity, and that'll make it easier for us to see. So if we go to 8 to 9 dexterity, we have -1, as you will see here. If we go 10 to 11, it's 0. Same there as 11. If we go 12 to 13, it's going to be +1. If we go 14 to 15, it's going to be +2. And then if we go 16 to 17, it's going to be +3. You cannot get to 18 during character creation. 17 is as high as you can go, so +3 is going to be the highest you can get. So you might ask, why would I leave it on an odd number? Well, when you hit level 4, you can get a feat, which can allow you to do an ability score improvement. So if you have 2 odd numbers, like if I have a 15 and a 17 in dexterity here, I can add +1 to both at level 4, and that'll round them both up to even numbers. So the goal is to try and have as many even numbers as you can, but you also want to not be too evenly spread. It's good to invest in one thing and to know what you're good at. You don't want to have a character that's got 12 in everything, because, like, yeah, you're going to be decent at everything, but you want to really play to your strengths and stick with what your character's best at. So it's not a problem if you want to have an 8 or even a 10 in a stat, but I wouldn't try to have 12 in every single thing. So then when you have your ability points selected here, you'll have your actual skill proficiencies you get to pick. Each class is going to have a option of skill proficiencies that they will allow you to pick based on what makes sense. A fighter is naturally not going to be good at Arcana, because they are a person that swings their sword. Now, there is ways to get around that. If I wanted to have Arcana, I would go to my background and I'd pick Sage, since they have Arcana and History as a skill, and then suddenly I have Arcana and History, which I normally probably could not get as a fighter. But if I'm playing as a soldier, then that Arcana is gone. Now, History is still there. I guess History is an option for fighters. But you'll basically pick off of your class what skills you'd like here. Some are going to be more useful than others. Insight is an extremely useful one that you want to have as your main character. There's a lot of insight checks in the game. Perception's very important. I'd have at least one of these charisma skills: deception, intimidation, or persuasion. Performance is also a good one, but it's not as useful as these other three. And then I'd also would recommend having either decent athletics or acrobatics. That will help you resist from getting shoved off cliffs from enemies. Yeah, basically, if I were to switch to like a rogue here, since rogue get many abilities, I have much more to choose from here, as you can see, and they have 4 to pick from, so I could be good in deception, investigation, sleight of hand, and stealth. And I can use my expertise to make my stealth and sleight of hand even better. So that is one benefit that rogues have, and also bards will also have high abilities. Bards can pick, as you can see, any ability in the game to start with. Like, they're a jack of all trades, and if you're playing as a lore bard, I believe at later levels you'll also get expertise. So bards are a great option for your main character as well, for all those skills that you can pick. Now, finally moving back to the origins here, let's go back to the Dark Urge. The Dark Urge is a very unique origin character. Your default is going to be this white dragonborn here, but you can still customize it just like your custom character here into whatever you'd like it to be. I didn't know you could stick with the Dark Urge's appearance by just playing as custom there. I'm learning something new even when I'm explaining stuff to other people. But when you play as the Dark Urge, as the name implies, the one interesting thing about the Dark Urge is that you have lost your memory. You remember nothing but a path paved with blood. Unimaginable cruelty whispers to you from within. Can you escape it? Would you even want to? So you have a very much more dark and sinister background to your character that you have no control over. The story will start to pick up at some point, and you will start to learn more about your past, about why you have these depraved and evil thoughts. And it is up to you as the player if you wish to embrace these evil thoughts and have a murderous evil playthrough, or if you want to resist them, which can cause that was my very first playthrough of this game, was as a Dark Urge that resisted their evil nature, and that can also be very rewarding in its own way. The Dark Urge is not limited to any race or class. You can change it just like custom. Now, if we're playing as the origins here, you are limited to the class and the race that they are. So you will not be able to change that. You cannot change the background. This is the character, and that's what you're going to be unless you meet a character later in the game that can allow you to change your class. But starting out, you'll be pretty limited on what you can pick because you're playing as a preset character. But those can be good options, I think, if you want to just kind of learn more about your companions. But that's just about all I have for character creation here. It is kind of a rough general guide. I can go into more detail on certain subjects if people want to know more. But I think I'll go ahead and end things here by playing our introduction to the Dark Urge, since I think he's worth playing on your first playthrough for anyone that's not played the game, and we'll go ahead and end things there. So thanks so much for watching the video. Please let me know if you want to see more content like this, and I hope y'all have a great rest of your day. Now I gotta clean up here, so I'll see y'all later.
My rancid blood whispers to me, kill, kill, and kill again. My ruined body yearns to reap death in this world. And when this foul urge calls, it possesses my whole being. Injured beyond repair. I know nothing besides this. I must resist the Dark Urge, lest it... I must discover who I was and what happened to me before my twitching knife hand writes a tragedy in blood.